Before you watch this glowing review of the Nikon D750, let me say that I don't particularly see Nikon as a technology leader. The D750, the middle member of Nikon's full-frame team, arrived with 3 new features, none of which are groundbreaking. But that doesn't stop the D750 from being a solid, capable, and versatile performer. This is going to take a while, so use the menu above to navigate through the various parts of the video. What's new? An articulated screen. It's good. It swivels all the way up and all the way down, but not up and around enough to use it while facing the camera. And for a viewfinder camera, I'd love to have a screen that closes to the camera, both to safeguard the screen and to avoid nose smudges.
The D750 has Wi-Fi. Nikon's implementation supports both image transfer and remote control. Connection is easy. Install the app on the phone. I'm using an iPad. Use the camera's setup menu to enable the Wi-Fi. Select the camera's network on the device. By default, it does not require a password. Then, load the app, select View Photos, Pictures on D750. Depending on the number of photos on the card in slot 1, it may take a few minutes to transfer all of the thumbnails. Select 1 or more photos to transfer. There doesn't seem to be a way to select all. Press Download and the images are transferred. Unlike most, this works with RAW files. There are 2 options for sending single images. In playback, press the I button, then select to send to Smart Device. A lightning bolt appears on the image. Make sure the phone is connected to the camera, then in the app select View Photos, and the image downloads. There's another option in the camera remote functionality. Select the Take Photos option to turn on Live View and stream the live image to the device. You can use the app as a full remote, but the slider at the top lets you use the camera and downloads each image as you take it. Although it's battery consuming, it does give you all your images to select which to post. In remote operation, the camera's settings are displayed, but only in portrait mode, and they can't be changed. There are no controls at all. Focus by touching the screen and take the photo with the shutter button below. The image is immediately downloaded to the phone. By the way, I'm shooting 24 megapixel RAW plus JPEG images. The file transferred to the iPad is a resized 1.8 megapixel JPEG, perfect for posting to social media. I find the app and the connection more reliable than most. The D750 supports video recording, all the way up to 1080 60p, at data rates up to 42 megabits for excellent quality. That speed and quality is limited to about 10 minutes, but lower quality recordings can go up to 30 minutes. With a full suite of ports, live HDMI, audio in, and headphone, the only thing it's missing is 4K. To be honest, those features aren't likely to convince you one way or another. You'll buy the D750 for its pro handling, its solidly built body, its superb image quality, and the detail Nikon has invested in optimizing every function. The D750 has more in common with the D810, the next model up, than the D610, one down. In fact, the tilting LCD and Wi-Fi are features not available on the D810.
The D750 isn't small, light, or inexpensive, and this is the deepest grip I've experienced on any camera, providing excellent hand traction, although the two-handed grip with the left-hand under lens is the most practical to allow your thumb to manage the controls on the right side of the back.
While not basic, the D70 is remarkably gimmick-free. There's no feature bloat here. This is a serious camera for serious photographers.
Throughout, Nikon's implementations and small details provide more functionality and thoughtful features that, after studying the 500-page manual, really serve photographers well. The more I learned, the better the D750 became.
Nikon sent the D750 body with the 50mm f1.8, the standard nifty 50 with a nice wide aperture, the 14-24 ultra-wide angle on a full frame that's wide enough to bring the 90-degree crosswalks on an intersection parallel, and a 200-500 super zoom. It's big enough to have its own tripod mount. In this case, you mount the camera on the lens, not the lens on the camera. Full extension adds 8 centimeters to its already substantial 28 centimeter length, changing the balance point dramatically. Although less susceptible than other long lenses, there is a lock to keep it from extending on its own. The tripod mount collar can be rotated for portrait mode shooting. I went wildlife shooting with Paul Marshman. You'll see more of his photos throughout. He took some great images at 500mm thanks to the fast autofocus and the excellent stabilization, although admittedly we were using a tripod for some of these shots. These may not be your first choice as a starter lens selection, but demonstrates the wide range of Nikon FX or full-frame lenses available. There have been some firmware upgrades since the initial release. Make sure you're up to date. The full-frame sensor contains 24 megapixels. You can get more megapixels, but I think 24 is a good trade-off. It allows bigger pixels, which can capture more light. In the photo shooting menu, image area choices are FX, the full sensor, 1.2, and DX, equivalent to an APS-C crop sensor. Image quality includes 3 JPEG settings, RAW and combinations, 3 image sizes, a JPEG compression setting, RAW bit depth, and type. I've maxed out all of these to save the maximum amount of information. I intend to take full advantage of everything the D750 can deliver, and that paid off, with a greater latitude for Lightroom adjustments than I'm used to, making dramatic images even when I miss the exposure. If it needs to be smaller or more compressed, I'll do that in post. Behind the dedicated side door are 2 SD card slots. The D750 supports up to 128GB SDXC. I tested with 64GB SanDisk Extreme Pro cards in both slots. That maximizes burst and video capture. The photo menu Roll Played by Card in Slot 2 option enables overflow, backup, or dual recording, or RAW on card 1, JPEG on 2, my option. This already gives you a sense of the depth and breadth of the D750's feature set. This is an enhanced viewfinder with a heads-up display that can include grid lines or a roll indicator. Use Custom F2 to assign these features to the FN button. The D750 body is packed with controls, which will be familiar to Nikon fans. 5 dials, mode, drive, diopter, front or aperture, and rear or shutter speed. 4 switches, power, focus, focus lock, and the live view selector. At least 20 buttons, many of which are double function: menu, white balance, quality, ISO, and I, play, delete, exposure, focus lock, info and live view, flash, bracket, and autofocus mode, metering, movie record, exposure compensation, preview, function, lens release, and the mode release lock. And some 2-button features like format, press delete and metering, or ISO and exposure compensation to reset. It's really overwhelming at first. We can keep it simple by setting the mode dial to the green auto setting. If you don't want the flash to pop up, as it is wont to do, use the adjacent no flash mode. All you need to do is compose, soft press the shutter to focus, and fully press to take the picture. Take a little more control with the scene position, turning the back dial until the scene is displayed on the LCD screen. 16 selections adjust color and shutter speeds to optimize the settings for the image. Some modes like landscape, night landscape, beach, and sunset suppress the flash. Pet portrait mode suppresses the AF illuminator.
But you didn't buy the D750 to shoot in auto. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
And to give you a sense of the depth, flexibility, and power you'll find, I'm going to do a deep dive on all of the exposure settings. If that's more than you need, use the menu to skip ahead to the next section. For the most part, I'm using live view mode. Press this button, and then select photo or video mode. Video mode changes the aspect ratio to 16:9, black bar at the top and bottom. It also adds audio on the HDMI out and displays a camera icon instead of remaining photos. Video recording is only available with the Live View video setting. Live View uses the LCD monitor instead of the viewfinder for composition, and I'm using it as it provides a recordable HDMI output for this video. When viewfinder mode is different, I'll explain. The widest aperture on the 14-24 is a constant f2.8, on the 200-500 a constant f5.6. For exposure, first I set the ISO. Press the ISO button and turn the rear dial, 100 to 12.8. Front dial for auto ISO. These settings are also available in the photo shooting menu, where the auto ISO sensitivity settings can be set. the maximum ISO, and the minimum shutter speed. Auto ISO works with manual exposure mode in stills and video, which is nice. In program mode, I expected the aperture to open fully before adjusting ISO. With the 50mm f1.8, it selected f4, but the flexible program adjustment with the rear dial allowed me to open the aperture fully. The custom setting D8 offers easy ISO, which allows the ISO to be adjusted in P and S modes with the front dial. At the Ravine Winery Harvest Dinner, in a candlelit cellar, I used ISO 6400 exclusively and found very little noise. There are 3 low settings. Low 1 is equivalent to 50 ISO, which increases contrast, and 4 high settings. High 2 is equivalent to 51.2K. Not sure why they don't just use the actual ISO to identify these, other than to remind us that significant compromise is being made. Noise is evident as you dial up to 25,600 and 51,200. In photo mode, the ISO controls work in program, shutter, aperture, and manual. In movie mode, only in manual. Movie and photo ISO settings are independent. In Viewfinder, when you switch to manual, a meter appears in the bottom center of the screen. It also appears on the control panel display. In Live View, press the I button to access the pop-up menu to turn Exposure Preview on, and press the Info button to display the meter. Press Info again to cycle through the displays to see the histogram. Oh, and isn't this the best level ever? It's like a virtual horizon with pitch and roll. But the meter isn't available when you switch to Live View mode. For the Viewfinder, use Custom F2 to enable a roll display or a grid display. Use the FN button to see it. There are 4 meter modes. Press the meter button and turn the rear dial. Reference the manual to decode the icons in the bottom left: matrix, center weighted, spot, and a very useful highlight weighting to help get the exposure right for performers on stage. Clearly, this is ideal for dance recitals, but it was also useful for this holiday planter, shot in matrix mode where the white flowers are overexposed, and then in spotlight. Not so much. Don't overlook the exposure customizations. Add face detection to the matrix mode, change the size of the center weighted area, and make one-stop compensation adjustments to the meter applied before exposure compensation. With center weighted and spot metering, use the AEL button to lock exposure while composing. This works in program, aperture, and shutter priority modes. Focus and take the exposure reading by soft pressing the shutter. Then press the AEL button. Depending on the setting, it can lock focus as well. Hold the AEL button, compose the shot, and snap. To use the shutter soft press only to lock the exposure, use the custom menu C1 option and turn the shutter release AEL on. Set the function of the AEL button using F4, a setting I adjust frequently. There are multiple options: lock both exposure and focus, lock exposure, hold exposure. In this mode, press and release to lock, press again to unlock. This enables multiple photos on the same exposure. You can also use the button to focus, AF on, or lock the focus, AF lock. There's also flash lock, or disable the button altogether. Set the aperture using the front dial, f1.8 to f16 on the 50mm, which is a bit noisy as you adjust. The I button offers an intriguing feature in movie mode called Multi-Selector Power Aperture. It's available in manual and aperture priority modes and provides smoother shutter transitions. Press up and down on the control dial to change. All 3 lenses were noisy when this feature is used. In fact, both aperture and focus adjustments are noisy. Shutter, using the rear dial, ranges from 1/4000th to 30 seconds. In manual, bulb holds the shutter open as long as the shutter is pressed. Time opens the shutter for 30 minutes or until the shutter is pressed a second time. X200 mode is a specialized flash sync mode. There is a long exposure noise reduction mode in the photo menu. In movie mode, minimum shutter speed is 1/25th at 24 frames, 1/30th at 30, and 1/60th at 60. There's no ND filter, which would always be useful for video. The powerful built-in flash has a guide number of 13 meters at 100 ISO. It pops up on its own in auto mode, otherwise it's released using the button. Hold the flash button and turn the front dial for flash compensation, -3 to +1. Note that the positive or negative indicator is the little icon in the bottom center. The rear dial selects the flash mode: fill, red eye, which illuminates the subject before taking a picture, rear curtain. With rear curtain, the light streams behind the object rather than through it. In program and aperture, 2 slow sync modes. Slow sync enables longer exposures to make backgrounds less dark. Flash-compatible shutter speeds range from 1/200th to 1/60th. In shutter priority, up to 30 seconds. In manual, it's compatible with bulb. Wondering if rear curtain fires at the end of a bulb shot? No, fires at the beginning. There are also advanced exposure features designed to compensate for images with a wider dynamic range. First, active delighting. Activated on the photo menu with 6 settings from off to extra high. Extra high provides one-stop extension. I'm not saying this isn't useful, but other cameras offer more. ADL seems to work primarily on dark areas, so expose for the brightest area in the image and then let ADL recover the shadows. If that suggests it works best with spot metering, you're thinking in the right direction. Here's the highlight spot image from earlier, now with ADL extra high. A second option is only available in quality modes that don't include RAW. The menu's generic error message isn't very helpful here, and if you turn HDR on, RAW is disabled. Easy way to change in viewfinder mode: press the quality button, turn the rear dial, and reference the LCD. There are 6 HDR settings, and you can choose whether you want to take a single HDR image or use it for all images until you turn it off again. When HDR is on, the camera takes 2 images and merges them into a single photo. Nikon says it works best with matrix metering. The settings range from useful to slightly overdone, but that's me being judgmental, and they're certainly not those garish clown pictures. This mode works with the interval timer. One more thing, bracket, which varies the exposure over a sequence of shots. Typically, you'd combine these in your photo processing software, or just quickly shoot a variety of settings and check which is best later. Custom E6 selects whether you're bracketing exposure, flash, a combination, white balance, or active delighting. I'll just choose exposure. Then set the order using custom E7 meter, then under, then over. Press the bracket button. Use the rear dial to select from 3 to 9 exposures, the front dial to set the increment, although if it's higher than 1, the number of exposures is limited to 5. Nikon goes beyond here by adding plus or minus modes with 2 and 3 exposures only up or down from the metered setting. Once set, you're in charge. You'll have to press the shutter for each exposure, so you won't want to refocus for each shot.
And finally, if you feel that things are out of control, set the camera back to the default settings using the 2-button reset. Press the ISO and exposure adjust buttons. However, this sets the image quality to JPEG normal, so you may wish to set that back to RAW plus. And it may not be as comprehensive as you want either. It sets white balance, picture control, HDR, and ISO back to the default settings. And I'd prefer if it also set the meter mode to matrix and focus back to single spot.
Now that we have the image properly exposed, let's focus our subject. All 3 of these lenses have manual autofocus switches. All 3 have a viewing window to see the focus distance, and tactile and audible detents at the end of travel. The closest focus distance on the 50mm is 45 centimeters. The 14 to 24, it's 28 centimeters. And the 200 to 500, it's 220 centimeters. Of these 3, it can capture the smallest physical image when fully zoomed in. All 3 provide a smooth bokeh. The 50mm, thanks to its wide aperture, the 200 to 500, thanks to its long zoom. I've removed the lens to show you the D750's mirror. By default, the mirror reflects the image coming through the lens up to the viewfinder. When I press the shutter, I've set the shutter speed to 1 second, the mirror flips up, the shutter opens to expose the sensor, closes, and then the mirror flips back. That sound comes from real mechanics, unlike in phones or mirrorless cameras that play a simulated sound. When I press the live view button, the mirror flips up out of the way so that the image goes directly to the sensor. As a result, the focus systems used for viewfinder mode and live view mode are different. For stills, I'd prefer the viewfinder. For video, live view is the only option. In live view, the only sound is the shutter, closing over the sensor, opening to take the image, and then closing again. This is a good time to talk about 2 of the viewfinder drive modes. Quiet, which doesn't reset the mirror until you release the shutter button, arguably 25% quieter. and mirror up mode, where a first shutter press raises the mirror and the second press exposes the image and resets the mirror. This can be useful for exposure durations where the mirror up causes a minute shake. Raising the mirror first eliminates that vibration. Also a good time to answer the question, what is this doohickey for? Light can enter the camera through the viewfinder, so if your eye isn't there to block the light, use the doohickey to keep the light out. Couldn't they just build a little screen inside with a switch? I'm sure this gets lost or forgotten 99% of the time. I am trying to get into the habit of slipping it on each time I go to live view. I'm going to start by using Ctrl F4 to set the AEL button to AF on, so pressing it focuses the subject. This gives you a sense of how fast autofocus works. Not the fastest I've seen. It hunts back and forth and is a little noisy if you're recording video. The advantage of an independent focus button is speed. Once you've focused a non-moving subject, you can keep clicking without waiting for focus each time. Many photographers call this back focus. Menu option G3 enables back focus in video. All three of these lenses have manual and auto-manual override switches. Let's go manual first. Set the body switch to manual also. The manual focus ring on all three of these lenses has a defined travel. There's a little pressure when you get to the end, although you can keep turning. I like that as it makes it possible to set and return to a specific focus point, particularly useful for video. In the bottom left of the viewfinder, there's a little dot with two arrows on either side. Typically, only one of the three is seen at a time. That's the focus assist. The arrows show which way to turn. The dot confirms the object is in focus. Move the focus red square focus point using the control dial. In live view, press the plus button to expand the view to focus assist. I wish that a soft shutter press would reset to compose view, but only the minus button returns to the full scene. This works with both still and video settings, but not while recording.
I'm connecting an external recorder monitor, the Atomos Shogun, on HDMI Mini, not the flimsy micro connector that's usually found. I've got the on-screen display off so that there's a clean feed to the monitor.
Incidentally, Wi-Fi is disabled when an external monitor is connected. In this configuration, it would be nice if only the LCD displayed the expanded view, but both do. And if the expanded view could be used on the LCD while recording video, again, sadly no. If you're wondering, use the Setup menu HDMI external recording control to trigger the Shogun to start and stop recording when you press record on the D750. Handy, with an on-screen icon to show the setting is active. Now, let's turn the autofocus on and return to the viewfinder. Press the focus mode button, turn the rear dial to select auto, single, or continuous. Single for stationary objects, continuous for moving objects. Auto switches between the two automatically when it detects movement. Use the front dial to select the autofocus area. With single, there are three choices. Single, move the selection using the control dial, lock it with the autofocus selector lock. This is my preferred auto mode. I decide how I'd like to frame the subject and set the focus point. Then focus, recompose, and shoot. For a slightly larger area, rotate the front dial to group, which can be positioned, or auto to let the camera select the focus point. There are more options with auto and continuous. Auto area, which includes face priority, group area, which can be set to find a subject in a specific zone, 9, 21, and 50 point dynamic area, designed to be used with objects that are increasingly difficult to follow, and 3D tracking. Maybe I didn't find the right occasion to use it, but it seems much like 51 point, suited for quick and erratic movement. In live view, there are only two autofocus modes. Yellow icon top right shows S, single for stationary objects, F, follow for moving objects. In S, the camera focuses when you press the back focus button or the shutter, whichever is active. In F, the camera continues to focus, locking when you press. Not always ideal, like this shot of Sarah Factor. Press autofocus mode button and turn the front dial to select the autofocus area. Same for both single and auto, wide, normal, subject tracking, and face priority. For face tracking, a double yellow border indicates a face has been identified, green when it's in focus. Although the detection works well in both modes, it stays with the subject or it stays with the face, I found it wasn't very good about maintaining focus as the distance to the object changed. The D750 is a fairly obvious and noisy camera. Between the focus illumination light and the sound of the mirror and shutter, you won't be able to be inconspicuous. Disable the light using custom menu setting A9. By the way, if you're relying on it in a dark situation, be aware it's only capable of working at distances between 1/2 and 3 meters. There are 2.5 ways to manage color, white balance, picture control, and effects. Honestly, white balance is always the first adjustment I make in a new environment. Either I decide that it's auto, I'm shooting raw and I'll fix it in Lightroom, or I'll take a custom white balance using a color chart. You can set white balance by pressing the white balance button and rotating the rear dial, but you'll miss some of the best settings. In the menu, you'll find that auto has 2 options. The second lets interiors be warmer, and that fluorescent has 7 options. To capture your own preset, compose, and expose the image with the gray card, select Pre in the slot, release, and then press the button again. Pre in the info panel will start to flash, press the shutter, and if it works, the panel says Good. Now the slot will have the image you just captured as reference. There's a similar process you can use in live view, but only in stills mode. Odd as for video, I nearly always use a preset because it can't easily be fixed in post. White balance can also be fine-tuned using the amber, blue, and green magenta axis. Then picture control. Again, you could do this in post if you're shooting raw. All of these settings also work for video, and it's not quite picture profiles, but flat for later processing. Standard for ready to go, and neutral somewhere between. Vivid for bright colors, portrait for natural skin tones and landscape, and mono for black and white. Each can be further tuned and saved as a custom preset. There are 9 slots which can be named. Quick adjustment makes overall changes, and there are specific controls for sharpening, clarity, contrast, brightness, saturation, and hue. Lots of room to experiment at your leisure. These settings are all available for video and can either be the same or independent. Great flexibility here. Compared to standard, flat, which is designed for grading in post, clearly provides a gamma adjustment. This enables me to bring the highlights down without sacrificing the shadows. But it would be nice to have video-specific gamma and picture settings corresponding to profiles for cinema emulations or to correspond to the HD video standards like ITU 709. Using a DSC Lab Xyla chart, exposed so that the whitest chip shows the highlight warning, compared to standard, you can see that flat provides an extended dynamic range. I can make out 11 stops, 5 of which are above 50% on a waveform. Looking for more? Turn the dial to Effects. Now, I'm not sure that they appeal to me, but there are a small selection of what now seem to be mandatory effects. Night vision, color sketch, miniature, selective color, silhouette, high and low key. They are interesting, work with video, and most take only JPEG images. Color sketch movies have a low frame rate. Miniature effect movies are sped up. Use live view to make further adjustments like vividness and outline for color sketch. Maybe they just require more creativity than I bring to the table. So if I could put in a request, could we have a starburst filter? Going on with video, the info menu eliminates the need to go into the menu. Frame rates range from 24 to 60, available at 1080, and 60 or 50 at 720. Sadly, no 4K, not even on the HDMI output. The menu has an entire section for video, 2 qualities, high and normal. The difference is bandwidth. I clock 1080p 60 at 36 megabits per second in high, while normal is 21 megabits per second. The image area can be set to FX, full frame, or DX for 50% crop. This enables the lens to zoom further, and as video resolution is so much less than the sensor is capable of, wouldn't have any effect on quality. I shot some video with the 50mm, but mostly with the 200 to 500, and none of these lenses would be the first choice for video. The 200 to 500 does include image stabilization, VR if you're speaking Nikon, with a specific sport mode, which doesn't compensate for panning. The zoom ring requires a whole half turn, which means repositioning my hand during a full zoom. With no motorized option for video, I'd prefer less of a turn. Movie image quality is very good, and the manual controls are excellent, but there are a few details that could be improved, like the Pro Gamma settings I mentioned earlier. There's a limited zebra setting called Highlight Display for exposure but no focus peaking. Internal audio isn't up to par. Before I got the hang of it, I completely distorted this recording of Emily Claire Barlow using the auto setting. For manual, particularly on an external monitor, making these adjustments is easy with good feedback, but I'd really recommend dual system external recording for quality work. The D750 takes stills while recording video, sort of. press the button to take a picture, but it stops recording video when you do. As you may press the shutter button accidentally, use G4 to change the shutter button to control start and stop video recording in video mode and take images only in still mode. We've seen two of the drive modes. Press the button and turn the collar. That leaves CL and CH, slow and fast burst respectively. With full resolution JPEG fine, I clocked 35 images in 5 seconds before it slowed. Took about 30 seconds to fully save the files, and that's using a fast U3 SD card. Performance is nearly identical in Viewfinder and Live View. Impressively, it's also about the same in full manual or full auto. There are two custom settings, the low speed burst rate D2 from 1 to 6 frames per second, and the maximum number of pictures in a burst, which can be set to any value from 1 to 100. In the bottom right of the LCD, Viewfinder and Info panel is a buffer size estimate, 23 images at full resolution JPEG fine, 12 for RAW, 10 for RAW+. With a fast memory card, I actually did quite a bit better. Final drive mode, self-timer. Do remember to cover the viewfinder. Custom drive settings C3 to set the delay from 2 to 10 seconds, the number of shots from 1 to 9, and the interval between shots from 1/2 to 3 seconds. That's control far in excess of what I've seen elsewhere. And that leads naturally into time-lapse, called interval timer in the stills menu, start now or set the time of day. Interval between shots from 1 second to 24 hours, set the number of intervals and the number of shots taken at each interval. Exposure smoothing, make sure the exposure doesn't change dramatically from one shot to the next. Very powerful. You'll probably want Nikon's optional power connector adapter to keep going for longer periods. The same option on the movie menu is called time-lapse, and it too can't be used while an external monitor is connected. The options are slightly different, and the end product is a silent movie file at the current frame size and rate. For high-quality work, I'd recommend shooting stills and then making the movie with your video editing software. One last drive option, multi-exposure, which exposes the same photo multiple times to combine 2 or 3 exposures in a single photo.
There is one feature that's missing though, panorama mode. Not that you can't do that manually.
I'm not much for playback features. Nikon's includes a slideshow and a retouch menu section to manipulate your images after shooting, which offers several filters and an extensive RAW conversion utility. Nikon's menu system is dense and complicated, but completely familiar to Nikon shooters. Otherwise, you'll want to keep the manual close at hand as you get comfortable. I do like the asterisks in the custom menu, which indicate that it's off the default. And there are very few options that get dimmed out, but the error messages are terse and generic when they are. For example, here, it should just tell you to disconnect your external monitor. I've mentioned some of the customizations, but there are lots more. You can create a personalized menu, and there are 2 custom configurations on the mode dial. There are specific resets for the sections, but there's no overall reset. This makes removing your Wi-Fi settings a specific task.
Having spent nearly a month on this review, I understand why Nikon owners are such passionate fans. The D750 is big and heavy, as are the lenses, and the DSLR design means the mirror sometimes gets in the way of ease of use. I had some minor quibbles, but there's no faulting any aspect of functionality or quality. There's a significant learning curve, but mastery of the D750 pays off in great images.